could put this, I don't know if you can see all the veins running through it,
Hmm.
but it's absolutely amazing. And so this is what it looks like in really, really raw form.
Wow.
Um,
Which gold mine did that come from?
do you know the name of it? It's actually, I'm not going to tell you where it is.
Okay, don't worry. I'll edit this. I'll edit
I
this
can't
out.
tell you. I can't tell you because then I'd have to kill you or something.
Okay. Well, now I'm leaving it in. Definitely. I got threatened with death by Lynette Zang.
I'll
Hey,
tell
Welcome
you.
back, everyone, from the Wall Street Silver community. We have a legendary guest with us today. We have Lynette Zang. She is the head trader at ITM Trading. How are you doing today, Lynette?
I'm excellent, but I'm actually the chief market analyst.
Oh,
I,
shoot.
I have a longer time horizon than short-term trading, but I am a technician.
There we
I,
go.
I, I did do it for a minute, but it just, I no, I don't have a personality for it.
There we go. We have some questions for you from the Wall Street Silver community and us. We also have Jim Lewis and Lee Justo. Jim, Lee, who wants to kick it off?
Lynette, you've been a very vocal analyst for years now that we're eventually facing a full currency reset. Um, no surprise there.
I'd say it's we're already in it, but
Yeah. So, but it's timing's the issue. It's like, in your view, is this a near term thing? And I define near term as the next 1 to 3 years, or do you see this as further out? And when we do get closer, what are the signs that you think people should be watching for that this is imminent?
well, that last part is the hardest part. But yes, I do think that it's going to be within a 3-year time frame, and I actually already think that it has already begun. And when you're asking about signs, look, there are a number of signs and things that always happen before. But if you look at the insanity in the markets, I would say that right now we have entered the roaring 20s of this transition. Because one of the things that always happens to lull people, the public primarily, into a false sense of security is they give them stuff. So in the 1920s, when this whole experiment with controlling inflation was beginning, we had the roaring 20s because of all of that flood of money. And that was the first time when the masses could actually get credit. And so, it was happy days are here again. Nobody realized that they were about to completely go on a mission to completely debase and destroy sound money. So today, if we look at what's happening, we do have this K-shaped recovery, but there are a number of people, and what are they doing? I mean, in my opinion, we've already begun a version of universal basic income. So give people all of this money to stimulate the economy, but for many people, it's still not stimulated. And for others, it's almost overstimulated, to be perfectly honest with you. So if you watch the divide between the income, the haves and the have-nots, so income and wealth inequality, we're past the levels that we were in 1928. The other thing is with the public, the naive public that really doesn't understand Wall Street and how it works and that this is really a rigged game, and they get sucked into it while you're looking at insiders selling out, which we definitely are, and you're watching the general public come in. And then all of a sudden, credit dries up, and who's left holding the bag? So I'm already seeing a lot of the signs that this is imminent, but I can't tell you it's Tuesday morning at 8:35, but it could be.
Yeah. Well, when a reset happens, and this is such a foreign concept to people because we've all grown up with the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar. Most people don't even remember the gold standard. What are, the word reset's being tossed around a lot lately. It's sort of become trendy almost to use the word. But I'm wondering how this might play out in real life. Is this something that is planned by the powers that be, or is it sort of forced on us by an economic event?
Yes, on both ends. Okay. So, in other words, absolutely a pre-planned event. But you have to, and I get your statement where you say, well, people have never really lived through a reset, which is actually absolutely inaccurate because the way that they design the fiat money, the government-based system, inflation is built into it for two key reasons. One is for governments, it enables that inflation tax and they don't have to go through legislation and make it visible. And for corporations, they get to pay the average worker less and less because in nominal terms, the income looks like it's going up. But when you look at real inflation and how it's truly gauged, which is by the products and services of these corporations, that's really what enables that income inequality. And they absolutely knew two things, one of which you actually even alluded to and stated in the question, which is they absolutely know that people marry the legal money of the state. So, we've had the US dollar forever, except it's been in different forms. And I'm old enough to remember 1971. I was like 16, 17. So I was still young, but I was old enough to really remember that whole transition and the level of chaos and the similarities that I see between then and now. But there was a run on the dollar at that point with foreign governments sending in dollars in exchange for the gold and sucking gold out of the US vaults. And that's why they had to close the gold window, as they say. But what they really did in that iteration was hand over full control of inflation to the central banks, which no debt and interest. So we have, in reality, since the very day that each one of us has been born, we have been living inside of the reset. And, it used to be that inflation was a dirty word. But today, it's the savior, which is garbage, because all it really does is destroy the purchasing power and the value of what we work for, which is why I personally convert it into real money.
Yes.
Gold and silver, because I know clearly that that's happening. Well, and then there will be some unplanned events that can push it. And of course, you never let a good crisis go to waste.
We have a question.
Hey, Ivan, when she held up those two coins, I thought she was going to pull a Greg Manarino, and we had Greg Manarino, and he started rubbing his silver all over his face. He says he loves his silver so much, and I thought you were about to do the same. So,
Well, I think I'm wearing a lot of it, aren't I?
Lynette, we have a question from one of our people on Reddit here on Wall Street Silver. Terrence Newburn is saying, should I pay off fixed rate debt before the crash, or should I pay off adjustable rate debt before the crash?
100% adjustable rate debt. Because one of the things that will happen is that we will see interest rates spike and you will never be able to get out of that debt. On the other side of it, on the fixed rate debt, since that's typically a contract that they can't just automatically change like they can with variable rate debt, that's really what the gold is for, is to pay that fixed rate debt off when they, this is the other piece, when they reset the currency get officially against gold, because that's how they reset it. I love both and I own both, but gold is the primary currency metal and that's what they do the reset against.
Have you diversified in any other assets other than gold and silver?
I am a tangible gal.
There you go.
I'm really a tangible gal. So I like dynastic wealth, and that's my personal goal, is for my family, my children, my grandchildren, great-grandchildren that I don't even know. And so what I'm executing for myself is is building dynastic wealth, which has 3 legs: real estate, really rare collectibles, as well as gold as a foundation of money. And you can do all of them with gold and silver. And I'll show you something. Forgive me on this one.
Oh, nice. What's that?
This is actually out of a gold mine.
Wow.
And you can see both the flecks of gold and silver in it.
That's
And
cool.
I wish, is there some way, Edgar, that you could put this? I don't know if you can see all the veins running through it, but it's absolutely amazing. And so this is what it looks like in really, really raw form.
Which gold mine did that come from?
Do you know the name of it? It's actually, I'm not going to tell you where it is.
Okay, don't worry. I'll edit this. I'll edit this out.
I can't tell you because then I'd have to kill you or something.
Okay. Well, now I'm leaving it in, definitely. I got threatened with death by Lynette Zang.
I'll let anybody else.
That's awesome.
Lynette, I have a question for you.
Actually mine.
That's funny.
Go ahead, early.
I'm just curious as to like what if you have a preferred form of precious metals: sovereign coins, bars, generic bars, junk silver. Do you have a prioritization of those for people?
I base it upon function, but I should also let you know that my uncle was a major antique dealer back east, and I was very close to him. And so he influenced me a lot in the tangible world, and particularly gold. And one day, I was about 10, and my parents and I had gone to his house, and he took us in a back bedroom. And he said, "Aunt Bertie," which was his wife, "if anything should happen to me, Aunt Bertie will be well taken care of for the rest of her life because of what's in these safes." And of course I looked, and they were 2 tall floor safes, and they were packed with pre-1933 gold coins. This was 1964, when it was illegal to own more than 5 ounces of gold.
Wow.
Except in the way that he was holding it. So when you look at, I really like to do what the smartest guys in the room are doing for themselves. And when you look at collectible gold coins, and I'm not telling anybody they have to spend $8 million on an ounce of gold, because you really don't. However, when they create rules, anybody that can do that, I don't know, I'm thinking they either get to write the laws or influence those that write the laws. And I do personally believe that we will see an overt confiscation of gold in this country, because even recent history tells us that that is likely to happen. Desperate governments do desperate things, but they have to also stay within the letter of the laws that they created. So, eminent domain laws, which means that they have to pay you for what they take from you. If you're looking at bars or bullion, that's pretty easy, because they manage, even admitting to managing, as I know you guys know, the precious metals prices, because a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency. So it would be pretty easy if, say, spot was at $3,000 or $4,000 at that point, and they chose to make a confiscation, to say, okay, well, we'll pay you $10,000 for it. And most people, not understanding that they are about to completely crash the currency, although I guess it would be kind of hard to believe that anybody thinks they wouldn't or aren't doing that now, but a lot of people would go, well, wow, it's only worth $4,000, and look at this, they're willing to pay me 10 for it. Okay, because they want you to volunteer. They do not want pushback. And then they just reset it, 3,500%. I mean, I don't know what the cover ratio is going to be, and I don't know what that's going to look like, except you can look at Venezuela, you can look at a lot of countries that have gone through it, and it just goes like that. So for me personally, if I can hold it I'm not talking about silver in this case, I'm just talking about gold. But if I can hold it inside of an IRA, I don't buy it because I believe that it's going to be confiscated. So I personally, that's not always been true. It just, once we hit a certain point in the trend cycle, I was no longer comfortable holding bullion. So I only buy gold collectible coins, and that's all I own. It can be sovereigns for the early ones. Swiss francs, you have to 1948 and later you don't want those because they're 1948 they're restrikes, so they have to be earlier. But so there's some caveats in there. But if I can hold it in an IRA, I'm not buying it.
Lynette, I agree with you. They are likely to try to get people to hand in their gold, making these ridiculous offers. But, and that might have worked decades ago when information was not so easily shared or dispersed through social media or online on the internet or through whatever method. But I think that the people who primarily are stacking silver and gold, in general, I think that class of people that is less trusting of the government.
I'd agree.
And probably more likely just to say, I don't think so. I'm going to change the subject a little bit.
Can I just comment on
Oh, yeah, of course. You're our guest. You can say whatever you want.
Thank you. But, aside from that, in the strategy that we were talking about earlier, part of the strategy is right now you've got gold and silver that are severely undervalued. And you have all other asset classes that are severely overvalued. Well, that's going to flip-flop. Mm-hmm. And I want the kind of gold and silver that I can actually use in the normal marketplace, because part of building that dynastic wealth foundation, or part of retirement planning, to be perfectly honest with you, is to ensure that you have income that you cannot outlive. So for me, yeah, maybe you don't turn in your bullion, but it's going to be a lot more challenging using it in the normal marketplace, which is definitely part of my personal strategy.
Well, gold is often, a 1 ounce coin or a tenth of an ounce coin is still fairly expensive. It's a big chunk of wealth comparatively. And most people, in our forum, silver is by far and away more popular. And a 1 ounce coin is or a half ounce round is possibly more useful in a barter economy if we ever got to that type of
absolutely
point in time. So stacking silver is probably a lot more common for people out there. Do you think that they would also try to seize silver? I mean, it is a strategic metal. It actually has a lot of, as Andy Schechtman told us, there's a certain amount of silver in every missile out there because of its strategic value. Do you think silver would also be on the table for confiscation?
They did confiscate silver back in 1933, but the difference between the two is that silver gets used up in manufacturing and gold does not. So I don't really have the same feelings around confiscation of silver that I do of gold. So I own like all of the above, and I 100% agree with you. The silver is really my barterable part of the portfolio, right? Because I like all the different sizes. I do the same thing with gold, because I like the sovereigns, for example, for like property taxes, because you can have your house paid off, but if you can't pay your property taxes, you're going to lose your house. So, it just depends on what am I trying to accomplish here? That's the direction that I'll go in. But for those people that are just looking to sustain a standard of living, then having all silver would definitely work because it is your barterable piece. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking to really grow wealth, you can hold a lot more wealth in the same size package.
Understood.
And so it just, again, it's establish your goal. That's the first thing we do. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? and then you design the portfolio around that rather than just kind of willy-nilly. No matter what you do with gold and silver, you can't get burned because it's so ridiculously undervalued. But is it really going to be the right tool for the specific job that you're looking at? Because even when you're saying, well, gold is expensive and silver is not as expensive, and all of that's true, but you can still get fractional gold coins. And you'll have to forgive me because I don't work in the retail area of the business anymore, so I really don't know what they go for. But, you can get old fractional gold coins for a few $100. So,
It's my understanding the premiums on gold are actually percentage-wise lower than on silver right now. So it's actually probably a better value to be stacking in gold right now. I hate to say that as a person from Wall Street Silver, but maybe gold makes a little, bang for your buck.
They're sisters. They're brothers.
Yeah.
I like them both.
Yeah.
I own them both. I accumulate them both.
Yeah.
Lynette, do you have any opinions on palladium, platinum, rhodium, any of the other metals out there?
Well, I do, but my focus is, those are industrial metals, and platinum is primarily controlled by Russia. But it is definitely a precious metal, but this is about this is about a currency reset. So my focus and what I accumulate for myself are the currency metals, gold and silver.
Okay.
We have another question here from Two Bullet. He's asking, how long does Lynette expect increased inflation or hyperinflation to last until countries reset their currencies?
Well, I can tell you that I set up my personal portfolio with silver to sustain my living expenses, my standard of living for 10 years. This is a big one, so I don't know. Things with the technology and all, things move really a lot faster, but it's really going to be based upon confidence because it's a con game. This whole fiat money system is a big con game.
Yeah.
And so when people are bloodied and battered and bruised enough and they lose that confidence, how long is that going to take to get that confidence back?
Yeah, I totally agree.
I listened to some of your recent interviews, Lynette, and you had mentioned that you believe that after a currency reset, we're likely to go back to some form of a gold standard.
Right.
But then you think we're going to leave it again as all governments do over time. They give up on sound money and they go to. But I was wondering when you said that, I was thinking to myself, the current generation of PhDs in economics, the guys all, the thousands of them that they have employed at the Fed. These guys are not trained to think that way. They do not value gold. And I'm wondering if there's any possibility with the current clowns running the show, whether they would ever, even in a full reset situation, whether they would come back to any form of a gold standard, because that's just not what they believe in. They're talking about this digital dollar or, the blockchain digital, whatever their reset digital currency is going to be. I do not think they will voluntarily limit themselves to their ability to print new digital dollars.
Oh,
and I don't know
that.
What method do you think, or what process do you think gets them back to a gold standard against their will? Because I don't think they're going to do it willingly.
No, they will not. No, they will not do it willingly, because as soon as you have a component of gold in any currency, it requires some level of fiscal responsibility. So no, they will never do it voluntarily, but they will do it to get the confidence in the currency back again. And if you stop and think about the fact that gold and good as gold and all of the cryptocurrencies, what do they look like? They look like they're gold coins, right? So even though we have been trained away from sound money over many generations, it is still in our DNA. And at the end of the day, even when you think back a few years ago to the sovereign debt crisis in Europe, a lot of people survived it by pulling out their silver and their gold in any form. It is monetary at its base, and that's how they survived. Plus, the IMF has actually discussed putting a component of gold back in to the SDR, which is stands for special drawing rights. It's just a name, but it's the IMF global currency, which personally I think is going to be the new world reserve currency, because you can have a global currency, then you can have a local currency, which is what we're going to have. But what would force them back into it is the same thing that's forced them back into it every single time, and that is to get the confidence of the public. And there's really we can send you this link if you make a note, Edgar. If you listen to Roosevelt's fireside chat back in the 30s, and you can trust, there was a run on the banks, right? And you can trust the currency because it's backed by good money. And what were they referring to? The gold that they confiscated. So, no, they're not going to do it willingly. But
no, I think an interesting parallel to this, Lynette, is the foundation of the euro. Because if you remember back when they were establishing that, they were talking about backing that with gold, and they just couldn't. Forgot about it.
The reason they're probably never going to go back to a gold standard, I think, is that limits their ability to wage war, because sound money puts financial constraints on a government. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people don't realize from the 60s, what led up to Nixon taking us off the gold standard was the Vietnam War and all the expenses of waging war and building up a military empire throughout the 60s, mm-hmm. and all our foreign overseas bases. It's a very expensive process. And on a currency that you can't just create at will, that creates limits upon a country. And I think that people don't quite make that connection between sound money and peace, and sound money and limited government. And that's my own personal theory. We had an interview with Junius Maltby a few weeks ago where he made that connection very clearly: sound money and the ability to wage war, or the inability to wage war with sound money policy.
That is so accurate. I did a study a number of years ago looking at, because governments would go off the gold standard in order to fund the war. And in this country, in the U.S., people don't realize this, but, they've confiscated gold before in this country. And I'm talking about even earlier than 1933. But there were roughly, obviously I don't have the data in front of me, so I could be off a little bit. But roughly there were about 40 or 42 years between wars. Then they would go into hyperinflationary mode to fund the war, and they would get rid of the central banks. Central banks typically only had a 15 to 20-year charter. And then they'd hyperinflate the fake currency away, the fiat currency away, and they'd go back on the gold standard. In 1913, when we were in, when was World War I, right? Ron Paul, who I agree with 100%, said it is no coincidence, and forgive me if I'm butchering this, but it is no coincidence that the era of central banks and the era of fiat money came about at the same time. And I know I didn't do the quote right, but that's basically what he said. And if you look at the time between wars, what I saw when I did this study is, World War I to World War II, the Korean War, etc. The time frame got shorter and shorter and shorter, and we've been in a perpetual war since 1989.
Yeah.
And look at the military-industrial complex. But war is changing now too. And so if we need the boots on the ground kind of war, there's a political reason for that. Because I think that we're entering, I think we've already entered, frankly, a new era the wars are really being waged economically and in cyberspace, which is a lot less costly, but we will probably still, unfortunately, have physical wars where people have to die.
You know, Mario at Manico 64, he just had a video this morning about the cyber attacks and, you know, the consequences of that and what's going on. And we just had, of course, the Colonial Pipeline a few weeks ago, which was probably a cyber attack also, which for some reason has disappeared from the news already. I don't know why, but tin hat. I need to, you know, I need to have a tinfoil hat sitting on my desk when I go into that mode, and I just put it on my head so people recognize what stage of the interview we are in.
But here's the thing, and I really want everybody to know this. Stop believing Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Wall Street is not your friend. It's about them making money. The reality is that the fundamental value of this stuff, the real value, the reset value is, it's hard to even say what it is because of all of that fiat money, government debt money that's being printed. And the more they print, the higher that fundamental value is.
I think that's so critical. What you're saying right now is we fool ourselves into valuing, you know, here's my little, I have little silver rounds from the little Buffalo Indian heads here. We fool ourselves into thinking of this in terms of dollars. And we really shouldn't. We should be valuing our wealth in terms of ounces. And if we are going for a full currency reset, you know, we say jokingly, silver's going to 1,000, silver's going to the moon. But if the currency is going to worthless, then the silver and gold are going to infinity. And it's just pointless to even value these things in dollar terms any longer.
Exactly.
But the only thing that we can have confidence of, no matter what the next currency is that becomes the currency of the day, this will have value within that currency, no matter what. And I can't say the same about Bitcoin or Ethereum or Dogecoin. You know, Ivan's a Dogecoin kind of guy, but no, I'm just joking. He's
Can we add to that? Because I don't really, I really never hear people talk about this too much. And that is the reason why this will have value regardless of what the currency is. And that's because these are they have the broadest base of function and the broadest base of buyer because they are used across the entire global economy, every single area. Period. End of discussion.
I heard that you closed out your retirement accounts and bought precious metals with them. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty hardcore thing to do.
Yes.
What would happen if you had said that to your peers back when you were a broker?
That's the smartest thing she could do.
I did.
Oh, I agree.
And I agree too. And, you know, because we've been, and really when you look at TikTok and all of these, they just want you to have real short-term thinking. I don't care if I miss a rally. That does not matter to me one little bit because I can guarantee you I will not know 1 second before everything collapses and all choice is lost. I'm personally very happy I did that because I paid my taxes. I was less than 59 and a half when I did it. So I paid my penalties and I'm making it up with gold and silver too. It retains your purchasing power. And I've even heard some of the talking heads on CNBC recently talking about purchasing power. Floored me when I heard that. But that's a pretty good indication. Do you really think we're not entering hyperinflation with all this money printing and the UBI starting?
Yeah.
Inflation is one of the most searched topics on Reddit right now. It's something like 70,000 searches per day or something like that.
Wow.
I haven't looked it up. It's entering the lexicon of people's, we haven't had inflation be a serious issue in decades. at least not officially, under official inflation.
Right.
And now people are starting to wake up as, you know something? My food bills are a lot more expensive, and I'm not seeing as much food in that grocery cart when I'm doing it. Something's not, no one's believing anymore. You know, people like you and me, we haven't believed CPI in decades. But I think everyday people who don't pay attention to these things like we do, they're starting to say, like, I don't believe those inflation numbers.
Right.
It's not, I'm not feeling it. And anyways, I think we're waking up a lot of people. I hope we are.
I hope so too, because we all need to be woken up. You know, I've been in this industry on some level, really, since I was, you know, my whole life, really. I mean, I started banking when I was 15. You know, I became a stockbroker in 86. And, you know, I understand that language. And when you do understand the language, and then you go, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Look at this more deeply. And then when you do that, you know, then the veil is lifted. And what you're indicating is that loss of confidence. People are going, well, they're telling me we're, you know, and I loved it when he came out and said, let's run hot, right? We're going to allow inflation to, they hadn't been able to hit their 2% target, but they're going to allow inflation to run hot. I was saying at the time, okay, they're getting us ready, and which is exactly what's happening.
We want to thank you so much, Lynette, for giving us this opportunity and joining us.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynette.